sometimes, so I get it to export into there sometimes too. Cool. So we go export. And now up here, it was showing us how much we got to go. It automatically just opened Photoshop for me, and now here we go. We have Annie. Yay! So
Complete with all the changes that we made in Lightroom.
Complete with all the changes that we made in Lightroom. The other way we can do that is actually just go edit in Photoshop CS 5.1, and it's just saying that this version of Photoshop requires a higher version of Camera Raw than I actually have at the moment, because I don't use Camera Raw. I don't, whatever. So I'm just going to go render using Lightroom, or you can go open anyway. Render using Lightroom means it's going to do exactly that same thing. It's going to export it into Photoshop as a TIFF, but it's going to basically, there we go, and keep all our settings. I'm just going to do a quick edit. I'm going to paint over Annie's face, not because she's ugly, but because it's a quick thing to do. And then I'm just going to save that. So I'm going to hit Control S on my keyboard and save it. And it's going to take a second. And I'm going to come into Lightroom, and you'll see there's that edit there that I've just done, and it's going 1 of 2 up in the corner here, just to say that it's part of a stack. So there's photo 2 of 2. So there's our original CR2, and there's our TIFF that Lightroom has just exported into Photoshop. And we can continue doing our Lightroom changes here on that. So there we go. That's our first segment done, I believe, Matt? That's
done and dusted.
Done and dusted! That was really, really quick. I don't think I've ever had to explain
that
Lightroom
was so fast.
Cool. So I do...
Okay, so now
Yep.
we have a bit more of a simple topic that we can
go back to
go
Photoshop
through.
now.
If you'd like to go back to Photoshop.
This is our life-saving tips, isn't it? Yay.
Life-saving tips.
Alright, I'm actually going to use Lightroom to begin with in our life-saving tips. So, only because I realised I forgot to export before, this... Oh, that's blurry, but we don't mind. We'll pretend... Oh, we can't see on the stream it's blurry. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to go edit in. Cool. So our life-saving tip for today, do you want to announce it, Matt? Yeah.
Okay, our life-saving tip for today is the ruler straighten.
Oh! Now this one, I'm going to admit, I didn't know about this until you told me a couple of weeks ago, and my life has been totally changed and excited.
It's such a simple thing.
Do you know how many times I have tried to straighten things with the crop tool? Okay, so this is called ruler straighten, and basically all you need to do is Photoshop will default over here on your tools menu to the eyedropper. So come over here, hold that down, or alternatively you can hit I on your keyboard and go Shift I until you get the ruler tool. And all you have to do, people, all you have to do is find the line that you want to straighten. Basically you click and you drag and you let go, and then you press straighten. And it'll straighten your image for you. It's so good. It's just amazing. It'll straighten it to that line. I'm actually not happy with that, so I'm going to straighten this building up. Let's do that. That's more fun. It's a really awful horizon line to straighten.
Yep. And for anyone who doesn't have latest version of CS5, the old school way of doing this was to use your ruler tool, draw the line that you want to straighten, and it is in image, rotation, and then you click arbitrary.
Yep.
Do you want to just show the lovely folks?
All right, let's do this. So I'm just going to straighten at random. So I'm going to go image, rotation, and arbitrary, and it's already got it in there. Is that right?
And that's already got the default values in there of where it needs to be. So when you click OK, it will straighten towards that line.
Beautiful. Lovely. Look at that. Yeah. Ah.
Such a straight image.
Such a straight image. Look at that. Wonderful.
No one would even know.
Never. So that brings... Oh, we can actually do that in Lightroom too. Shall I show you the Lightroom version of doing that? Maybe I can.
Yeah, we could do that.
All right. So to do that same thing in Lightroom, basically find your image. I'm going to find... Let's find something else. This one. All right. These are my awful photos of Melbourne. I really suck at landscapes. Okay, so... Alright, so we come into the Develop module, we click Crop, and then we want to use this here. Right here, we have the angle tool when we hit crop. So we can do that exact same thing right there, and then just hit close on that tool. Perfect. Wonderful. Ah, actually, that's not very straight, but you know what I mean. You get the idea. It works. It's good.
And the awesome thing about Lightroom is that we'll actually crop it in for you, whereas in Photoshop you would have noticed that it added all that white space around the edge.
Yeah, exactly. So Photoshop will extend your canvas like so, and Lightroom will crop it in instead. Beautiful. So I think we're into our next segment already. Yay! Which is Photoshop for crazy nerds.
Next segment.
Yeah. Hello, you there, Matt?
Yeah, Photoshop for crazy nerds.
Sometimes Matt goes
Not sure
quiet.
I could be heard for a second there. Did we just have a dropout?
You had a dropout, yeah, just for like a second.
Okay, so what we're going to do for this segment is we're just going to continue along our little theme of Lightroom for tonight.
Yeah.
And do a couple more crazy things with Lightroom.
Yay! So this is meant to be the nerdy segment on our show, and so I mean, admittedly, this isn't going to be very nerdy, and most of you Lightroom fans will already kind of know all this stuff. However, I will talk a little bit about, making develop presets and stuff like that. So let us begin. So I started mentioning the histogram before. We have in your histogram, you have blacks, fill light, exposure, and recovery. You probably can't see that, but you can see my mouse going along there anyway.
Yeah, we can see the segments lighting up.
Yeah, cool. So blacks obviously deals with your blacks. If you want more blacks in there, you turn up and down the blacks, or if you want less, you know. Fill light basically puts light into... I'm finding it hard to explain without, showing a tonal curve here. But pretty much, if you've got some shadows, I'm just going to find an image that has that, and I reckon Imogen does. Cool. So Imogen has see these gaps here. I'm just going to put a bit of fill light into them. And going to my develop module, it sometimes gets confusing because it will go back to, I just went back to my library. But yeah, you'll see I'm just lightening up those shadows, and it's kind of putting in a bit of extra light in those blacks as well. So that's what fill light is. Be careful when turning up your fill light too, because sometimes it does kind of add a bit of grain, I've noticed. Cool. And this middle section is exposure, so that, pretty much deals with basically your exposure. There's no need to explain that bit. In Lightroom 4, you'll have another step here, which will be dealing with your highlights. I find that really, really handy. It sort of deals with not your high highlights, which is here. This is called recovery, and all that does is brings in your white point. And your white point is hard to explain if I haven't explained curves before, but it's basically, how much tone is in the white area, the high white area of your image.
Where your whites clip out and start.
Yeah, so you can see
white.
Exactly, yeah. You can see in the histogram here too, it's telling me where stuff is, so and how much information is in that certain section. Now, you don't always have to use the histogram and drag that up and down. All I'm doing is clicking on that and moving back and forth with my mouse to bring up my exposure and stuff. You can also edit that here in the exposure, so that's exactly the same as what I've just edited in my histogram. And
just with the slider control for people who like to do that.
Yep, and you can also type in a value here. So, exposure plus 50. That was a bit intense, but, whoops. Yeah, so there we go. All right, let's get that at a decent exposure. I have a tendency to overexpose slightly. That's just, I think, me, but anyway. All right. So down here, there is also brightness and contrast. Is that sort of more what you may be used to? I've honestly rarely touched that. I don't know about you, Matt, but...
No, I don't really. Like, if I have to do any kind of tonal correction, it's usually with curves or levels or something.
Yeah. So you've also got up here autotone, and what autotone does is it kind of is a computer calculated version. It will take this histogram and even it out pretty much. That's the best way to explain it, isn't it, Matt? I don't know, you're better at
Yeah, it's a pretty good way of explaining it.
Yeah.
It'll take a good guess at kind of where the exposures should be.
Yeah, pretty much. Cool, so down here we've got our tonal curve, which is much like in Photoshop, and down here we have our shadows, and once again, we're editing our shadows here. There's my mids, and they're a bit more refined than using your histogram like I would have before. This is basically a more refined version of exposure recovery fill light and blacks. So if you're finding they're not quite doing exactly what you want them to, then come into here. And you can also, if you can see there, is that visible on the stream when I'm moving the highlights knob? The curves kind of going up and down.
Yeah, we can see that.
Cool. So, and you've also got some sort of inbuilt kind of point curves. So these are just the typical S-curve sort of situation, really. Cool. Down here we have, this deals with your color and things like that. Oh, I've missed an important thing. I've missed white balance and temperature. I'm just going to come back up the top.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. So, white balance is basically controlled using temperature and tint. And in this case, I'm going to just kind of, I like this a bit bluier than normal, but that's just because I know how I'm going to edit it in the end. But temperature deals with, whether or not it's hot or cold. So if you have a really red image, like I do in a second, come on, computer. My poor computer's getting old. She needs an update. Okay, I'm going to grab this image where she's very, very orange. This is done using a lens baby as well, so it's got this kind of interesting drop-off and stuff happening on it. Okay, I always tend to do my exposure first because quite often if I do my exposure last, it screws up the white balance. I found there's different white balances for different exposures. So you do your exposure, and then I'm just going to, chuck a bit more blue into this. So if you've got a, kind of orangier image, you put blue into it. And she's a bit pink, sort of, so I'm just going to take some of that out by using my tint knob and adding a bit of green. But if I wanted to add some magenta, I go that way, obviously. Basically, there we go. And you've also got you've got auto there. Auto is actually not too bad. And then all these different sort of custom things there. And you've also got a black and white sort of thing where you can just hit black and white and use those. These now kind of go to black and white. There's also vibrance and saturation. The difference between vibrance and saturation, they look like they're doing the same thing, but saturation is pretty much like the colors going from their, kind of highest numerical value, if that makes any sense, down to not having any color in it at all and it just being black and white, whereas vibrance is a more controlled version of that. So it kind of does the same thing, but you'll notice when you have a play, it kind of deals more with photography, I guess.
It's almost on a curve, isn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
The vibrance.
There was a really great write-up on it in Better Photoshop Techniques, not this one, but the one before, not this current edition, but the one before that, I think, which explained it really well. Cool. So we were down here so this is all your color corrections and stuff like that. Along with white balance, you can actually just hit the W key and pick a sort of neutral sort of area. This doesn't always work, and on this image it's kind of hard, and then it'll auto white balance for you. Cool. Anyway, alright, so we have hue, saturation, luminance, and all. And this is just simply a way of playing with color. Your saturation will literally, like we were talking about before, it goes from its highest value of red, for example, I'm editing the red one right now, right down to no red at all. So we were talking about, I'll just do an example we were kind of talking about last week, like selective color. You can actually do that here. But don't do that. I'm just showing you this as a, this is how this knob actually works. So say you've got a little bit, in this case I've got too much blue, or I want more blue, or something like that, I can use this. Remember, it's sort of an overall, and when I just white balanced. Anyway, this is a blurry shot, as I said, because it's shot with a lens baby. And I just hit my white balance key, and it shouldn't have done that. But anyway, cool. So as you can see, when we're coming closer and I'm upping the blue, just remember it's going to come into other spots of the image too. So when you do push it that far, it's going to go pretty intense. I'm just going to fix up my... why did I just do that? The cool thing about Lightroom that I haven't explained is that you've also got, down here I've got my Lightroom presets. over on this